Welcome to the Open House podcast site, available at openhousecommunity.com.au.
Dwayne had the great pleasure of catching up with our next guest. They'd just commenced a career in education, a young teacher, very bright future ahead. But he gave it all up to travel the world on a bicycle. That's not all. He decided to do it for a great cause, cancer research. Cancer had touched Chris Gruar's life on too many occasions, and he'd had enough. At only 2 years of age, he lost his mother to cancer, and a few years ago, a cousin's wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. His journey started in England in March 2012, and he's since travelled more than 40,000 kilometres on his bike and raised $30,000 for the Association of International Cancer Research. He cycled through more than 40 countries and landed in Australia in February 2014. Chris spoke with Dwayne Jeffries earlier this week, and we pick up the conversation where Chris is talking about the gruelling experience of the trip.
Yeah, there are one or two hills, the Caucasus, the Alps, the Fords of Norway, the Tian Shan mountain range in Central Asia. Yeah, a couple of hills there.
Let's reset for a moment though, Chris. What possesses a teacher to put his career on ice and push bike around the world?
Well, since you mentioned a career, as a 28-year-old, I knew that I'll be teaching till I'm about 70, given our aging population, and the economy. So, why not take a bit of time out of a career? I am a history teacher, so from the saddle, it gives you this unique perspective on the world. Great place, a great way to explore historical sites as you go. And I've unfortunately lost my mum to breast cancer when I was 2 years old, so I'm actually cycling and raising money for worldwide cancer research.
Now that you're back in Australia and the blisters have started to heal, perhaps give us a couple of the headlines, the stories that stand out more than any other for you.
Probably I detoured about 8,000 kilometres at the start to go the opposite direction up to the Arctic Circle, as you do. And for me, camping next to reindeer and walking on glaciers, that was something really special and something I hadn't really imagined doing coming from Sydney, growing up here as a kid. And then after exploring Gallipoli and going through Turkey and Persia, joining the Silk Road was just phenomenal. Linking up these ancient oasis towns of Bukhara, Samarkand, Urumqi. To give you an idea, sometimes I'll be cycling up to 4 kilometres height. So, you'll be starting off, there was one climb from the Yellow River in China. It took me about 8 or 9 hours of non-stop pushing uphill, and Wilson, my bicycle, weighs 50 kilograms, so I'm usually doing about 7 to 8 kilometres an hour when I'm pushing up. And there are a couple of occasions, one climb in Kyrgyzstan, for example, where you get up, it's snowing, it's still the middle of summer, but it's still snowing, and dropping down in a snow blizzard. The bike gets lots of speed. Once I'm going up about 60k an hour, it doesn't take long to get cold, so I'm shaking, I'm suffering from hypothermia, and a lot of the time it was get inside as quickly as I could, and luckily on that particular occasion, a family invited me into their yurt for the night.
How are you getting across the language barrier? You just turn up blue, shaking, and they go, come on in, clearly you need a fire.
You just, lots of smiles, lots of body language, learn a few words, so sabadi or salam alaikum, and then...
Their greetings?
That's right, hello, or God be upon you, and then learning, to compliment someone's cooking. So I'll try to learn delicious, and then just lots of smiles. And there are, of course, places where this means absolutely nothing. So, for example, in China, even hand gestures are entirely different. So I would literally just have to walk into a restaurant, go straight into the kitchen, point at a variety of things, or just quack like a duck. So I'd walk in and go quack, 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 or make a pig-like noise, or a moo, and that's how I'd get fed. So,
while we're on the subject of food, give me some of the more exotic foods that you got a piece of while you're on a pushy.
I reckon horse's milk would be up there with my favourite for exotic. I first tried it in Osh, an old Silk Road medieval city, and I didn't quite like Osh, so I didn't quite like the horse's milk. Very tangy, sounds as bad as it tastes. So I didn't fill the drink bottles up with it or anything. But once you get up high, once you're in those nomadic areas, you don't really have a choice. So I got used to it within a few weeks.
There must have been moments when you're pedalling solo around some of these places, whether it be in the top of the world or down in a desert somewhere, where you must have been desperate to show somebody. You pinch yourself going, I cannot believe I'm here, and I'm here by myself.
You get used to internalising your experience when you're travelling alone, and I just sort of took a lot of pictures. Luckily, I do have a website, so it was a pleasure sharing it with followers from all over the world, and that was cyclingforcancer.com with a number 4 in the middle. So yeah, I did try to stay connected online and sharing my adventures with the communities around the world. But yeah, there were some moments where I just wish I could have shared, like, for example, when I was just at the edge of a Gobi Desert and I was camping out underneath the stars amongst the sand dunes and stepping on a desert fox, when I went out to go to the toilet at 2 in the morning. And these sorts of random encounters with animals, or when you're pedaling along with elk, in Norway, and you want to scream, look, it's an elk. But of course, there's no one there. Now, my bike, Wilson's pretty good, and, I chat away to Wilson, but unfortunately, he never really spoke back, so it was all a lot of alone time.
Tell me about the close call in the Caucasus.
Yeah, and unfortunately, while I was in Armenia, I was almost murdered. I pretty much got invited to someone's home, and the wife cooked me some food, gave me some coffee. I left the bicycle at the family home while I went and did some heavy labour with the husband. Came back after dark. The wife had stolen most of my things, and because of the lack of language between us, things got quite aggressive very quickly. And I had to run for my life. Got to a Russian supply base after jumping a barbed wire fence. They kicked me out when the commander arrived because it was out of a jurisdiction. Had to hitchhike to another city. Came back hours later. And the whole time I'm thinking they're just destroying everything. But luckily, they didn't have electricity. They don't watch CSI. So I was able to get all my stuff back. So that was great. And the police were incredibly helpful. My Iran visa was running out, so we couldn't start a criminal case. I just had to jump on the saddle again and pedal on. It was definitely an experience that I learnt from. And I definitely let down my guard trying to experience the best of hospitality, and I didn't make that mistake a second time.
What have been the changes in your life now that perhaps others look at you and say, wow, you weren't this guy when you left?
I think I'm really tuned into my emotions. When you're cycling and you're alone for sometimes months at a time without speaking English to another person, you really realise that, I have this ability, I guess, to take a step back and go, right, why do I feel the way I feel now? And then what can I do to change that? So I've definitely got that and a sense of perseverance as well. And not to mention how much worldly I think, being disconnected from Australian culture and politics for such a long period. I think on my entire trip, until I got to Southeast Asia, I'd met 2 Australians. One in Bishkek and one in Istanbul. So, it was a long time to be disconnected from Australian culture, and by exposing myself by necessity to differences, I was able to appreciate the world and from a different perspective.
How are you going to go back to teaching afterwards?
Well, to be honest, the classroom's a battle as well. So, like I said, in terms of character building, I definitely got that perseverance, and, as I've gone to these places, I've taken footage, I've taken pictures, and by making a difference, I think kids respect the fact that I've gone out there to do something differently, and to raise money for a charity. And unfortunately, most children and adults are affected by cancer these days. So I think it's something that will help my career, and hopefully once I've taken that time to transition back to reality or to suburban Sydney life, hopefully it makes me a better teacher.
You were looking to raise $30,000?
Yeah, that's right, Dwayne. Yeah, 30,000, and I've raised about 26,500 now. And I'll point out that that's all been, like I mentioned, my trip's entirely self-financed, no sponsorship whatsoever. But that's just without a support team behind me or anything. So it's all been collecting along the way. I got a little collection box with me, and online social media as well. Next Sunday, the 22nd, we have an event at Bahrain's Cafe, and the event goes from 12 to 5, includes lunch, and we have 2 acoustic guitar sets as well from local singers, and half of your money is actually donated to cancer research. So it's a $50 ticket, but 25 of that goes straight to worldwide cancer research, and it promises to be a fantastic day.
It sounds like this is the beginning of a bunch of other stuff that you've got planned for life. What's next?
Yeah, I think my mates have got a bit of a wager. You know, one of them suggested I got about 3 months before I shoot off overseas again.
I would have thought 3 months would be generous.
Yeah, that was my response.
Yeah.
No, I'm ready to settle down, and there was a time in this trip where I decided to cycle across the Americas, but after revisiting classrooms in Southeast Asia and in lots of international schools, I realised just how much I'm missing it, and I'm looking forward to the next stage of my life and making a difference in Australian schools.
Chris Gruar, congratulations on what's been an epic effort for cancer research. We'll post a link to your blog site on ours at openhousecommunity.com.au, and when you head off on that next epic journey, be sure and swing by, won't you?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dwayne, and thanks for having me on Open House.
We hope you enjoyed this Open House podcast. To hear more from Open House, visit openhousecommunity.com.au.